Today we're going to review some parent functions that you would have learned about in Algebra 2. The first one we're going to go through is the quadratic. So the parent function for the quadratic is f of x is equal to x squared. Our key points and table of values for the parent function have x values -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. If we plug -2 into the equation and square it, it becomes +4. We do the same thing for every x value, and we get the coordinates 4, 1, 0, 1, 4. Then we're going to plot those points, and this is what our graph looks like. The domain is all real numbers, so -infinity to +infinity, and the range, which is our y values, it starts at 0 and it's including 0, and we go to +infinity. You may be asked to identify other characteristics such as increasing and decreasing. So if I asked for increasing, that would be on the right-hand side of this graph. So we would identify that as 0 to +infinity, and decreasing would be -infinity to 0. Remember, increasing and decreasing always has round parentheses. We could also ask end behavior. So the limit as x approaches -infinity of f of x is +infinity. The y values are going up on the left-hand side, and the limit as x approaches +infinity of f of x is equal to +infinity. The next graph we're going to look at is the absolute value. So the parent function, f of x, is equal to the absolute value of x. Our x values are going to be the same, and then when we plug -2 into the absolute values, we end up getting a positive number. We're going to graph those numbers, and we get a V-shaped graph. Our domain is -infinity to +infinity. Our range is 0 to +infinity. Increasing and decreasing. So increasing is going to be 0 to +infinity. Decreasing, -infinity to 0. Again, those round parentheses. For end behavior, on the left-hand side, the limit as x approaches -infinity of f of x is +infinity, and the limit as x approaches +infinity of f of x is also +infinity on the right-hand side. Next, we have our square root function. So f of x is equal to the square root of x. Now our table of values is going to change a little bit because we can't take the square root of a negative number. So I'm actually going to start at 0, and then I'm going to just pick a few numbers that I can take the square root of. So the square root of 0 is 0, square root of 1 is 1, and the square root of 4 is 2. So I'm going to plot those, and there I have the graph. The domain now starts at 0, and it includes 0 because we actually have a point there, and our range are positive values. Now increasing, the slope is positive. Oops. From 0 to infinity. So the slope is positive and it continues to increase as it goes to the right. And decreasing, we don't have. For end behavior, we only have end behavior on the right-hand side because the graph actually begins at x is equal to 0. And the last graph we're going to look at is the rational function f of x is equal to 1 over x. So we're going to use the points -2, -1. I'm going to add in a couple more points in here. When we plug in -2, we get -1/2. When we plug in -1, we get -1. When we plug in -1/2, that's 1 over -1/2. So it ends up being -2. When we plug in 0, 0 in the denominator means that it's undefined. When we plug in 1/2, we get +2, 1, and then 1/2. So I'm going to go ahead and put an asymptote at that undefined mark, which is x is equal to 0, and then plot the rest of the points. This graph actually has a horizontal asymptote as well. So if we go and put down the domain from left to right, we go from -infinity to 0, we jump over 0, then we go to +infinity, and the same thing for the range with our y values. For increasing and decreasing, the slope along these lines are actually all downward sloping. I'm just doing tangents along that green line, but they're all downward sloping, so it's actually decreasing from -infinity to 0, and from 0 to +infinity. So the whole thing is decreasing. I don't believe our book asked that, but I just thought I'd fill that in because I did it for the other ones. For end behavior, we have the limit as x approaches -infinity of f of x. So on the left-hand side, the y values are approaching 0. And on the right-hand side, the limit as x approaches +infinity, those numbers are also approaching 0 from the right-hand side.